Now, I don't know if everyone has been aware, but yes, even though Liz Cheney has lost her primary, there are talks of Liz Cheney possibly running for president in 2024. And I don't mean to roll my eyes. I don't usually do that on here, but it was one of those moments. And I'm sorry. It's interesting to me the way that commentators on mainstream media and the way that Democrats are talking about this. The idea of Liz Cheney running as an independent. So it's interesting because they don't want anyone else to run as an independent. They don't want anyone else to run third party either. But they seem to be, they're kind of okay with the possibility of Liz Cheney doing it. I can't. Let's get into it. Shout out to Case Study QB for this clip. Polling shows Liz Cheney will take votes away from Biden if she ran in 2024 as an independent. Let's go ahead and get into it.
As questions swirl about whether outgoing Wyoming Congresswoman Liz Cheney will pose a challenge to former President Trump's expected 2024 presidential bid, new polling suggests her candidacy actually would hurt the current president more than his predecessor. In the latest survey from Yahoo News and YouGov, 46% of registered voters say if the 2024 presidential election were a two-way race between President Biden and Trump, they would back the current president. But
let's look at this for a second. Now, this is the YouGov poll. 46% say they would support Joe Biden if it were today. 42% said Donald Trump. And 12% said undecided. This is what happens. You guys see this? This is what happens when you give people two options that people don't really want. Now let's look at the details here. This is among 1,563 registered voters. So keep that in mind. That's registered voters. And that's a little over 1,500 people. I wonder what it would be if they asked more people. Let's go back in.
But when Cheney enters the mix as an independent, look at this. Trump wins the three-way race with 40% of the votes in that scenario. 17% of voters do say they are undecided.
Okay, so if you throw Liz Cheney in, this is just what they're saying, their thoughts, not necessarily mine. If you throw Liz Cheney in the mix here, now you have Donald Trump with 40%, Joe Biden with 32%, Liz Cheney with 11%. That's pretty high for an independent. Again, keep in mind, this is only a little bit over 1,500 registered voters that they're counting here. And then 17%, the number of undecided went up. 17% undecided. You know, what's really interesting, look how many of them shifted from Joe Biden to either Liz Cheney or undecided. And so here's the question here. Let's go back to look at this previous poll here. Okay, so in the previous poll, Joe Biden had 46%, Donald Trump had 42%. 12% undecided. Snapshot, 46, 42, 12. And now in the new poll, if you add in Liz Cheney, Joe Biden drops to 32%. And that's interesting because that's showing you that some of those voters for Joe Biden also went to the undecided category here, with 17%, because that went up, right? And some of them either went to Liz Cheney and some of them could have gone to Donald Trump, believe it or not. But what does that tell you, right? What does that tell you? That some Democrats are actually willing to vote for Liz Cheney? Really? Warmonger Liz Cheney? You guys see how it's just one party? You see how it's just one corporate party? This is really interesting. So, again, I would like to see more voters. I would like to see a larger number, a larger sample size, but I guess this is pretty typical. But for him to drop from 32% to, 46 to 32%, once you throw in Liz Cheney, that's interesting. You know what that tells you also? Is that if voters have more options, they can choose the other option. That tells you that those voters, some of them that selected Joe Biden on the first question, didn't really want Joe Biden. They didn't really want Donald Trump or Joe Biden, but they're probably thinking, oh, lesser of two evils, so I'll go with Joe Biden. When you give people more options, then they start to say, oh, wait a minute, I think I'll vote for an independent. This is what they don't want. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not cheering on Liz Cheney by any means. She's a warmonger and she's ridiculous. I don't know what she's trying to do here. But this is what they are afraid of. They are afraid of giving people more options. This is why they would smear someone like Jill Stein, right? Now, they have no problem promoting and discussing Liz Cheney running as an independent, but they have a problem with anybody else doing it. Anyone on the outside, they got a problem with it. What does that tell you? One corporate party.
Following her Republican primary defeat last week, Cheney said she would consider a presidential run. She's not said, though, whether that would be as a Republican or as an independent. So this was the suspicion of many people, at least, that if she ran for president trying to take down President Trump, she might actually take down President Biden.
Exactly, because who would be the voters who would move from Donald Trump to Liz Cheney? Not that many people. If you're a hardcore committed Donald Trump voter, you don't just move over to Liz Cheney. It's taking some never Trumpers who then don't vote for Joe Biden. So maybe she could really damage him in the Republican primary, and her presence in the Republican primary would stunt Trump, much the way that Marco Rubio was taken out by Chris Christie, perhaps, but in the general does not help Joe Biden at all.
So Sam Stein, this is why many.
But I think why I would say Joe Biden doesn't help himself. Like, I'm sorry, if you are that strong of a candidate, throwing in someone like Liz Cheney as an independent, your numbers should still hold. If you're that strong of a candidate, even throwing in someone else like a Liz Cheney, who, again, like I said, she just lost her primary, your numbers should still hold. They shouldn't drop that low. 46 to 32. But he's not. That's the problem. The commentators look scared, huh? They look very concerned. They're like, uh-oh, look at this guy's face.
Democratic strategists are saying, applause for you, Liz Cheney, standing up to Donald Trump, leading this fight against his attempt to overturn the 2020 election. But please do not run for president.
Well, let's start by stipulating that this is painfully early for 2024 conversations, but I hope. But I think I agree with all the analysis. It's hard to see how she could impact an election in the way she wants while running in that election. Elise is absolutely right. Her candidacy would draw support away from Biden by getting never Trumpers to vote for her and not him. I think the damage she could inflict, if that's what she wants to do, and all indications are that's what she wants to do, would be through the form of a primary bid, but even that would be so long shot at this juncture. So my suspicion is she knows this stuff. She's pretty wise politically. She understands how this works, and that she ends up doing something entirely different than running for president, maybe launching an organization or some sort that could do ads or organizing in the course of a Republican primary and then ultimately in a general election to try to defeat Donald Trump, which she has stated is her preeminent goal at this juncture.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I have to chime in here for just a second. Do you guys honestly think that Liz Cheney would beat Donald Trump? I don't think so. I never thought that, by the way. When they first entertained this idea, when Robert Reich wrote an article about it in The Guardian, and he was pushing Liz Cheney, I picked on him for that, by the way. He was pushing Liz Cheney for president, to run for president. I never thought that she would beat Donald Trump. Still don't believe that. Because here's the thing. I know Trump voters. I know plenty of people that voted for Donald Trump. And not necessarily for the reasons you may think. Some of them just hated Hillary Clinton. Some of them wanted to vote for someone who wasn't a politician. Some of them just don't like Joe Biden, right? So I know plenty of people who voted for Donald Trump, especially if I go back south to visit my family. There's a lot of Trump supporters. So I don't know why they thought this would be a good idea. I mean, look at what happened before when Trump ran in 2016. They thought Jeb Bush was going to be a good idea. Jeb Bush was putting people to sleep. Then they said maybe Ted Cruz. Ted Cruz was also just people were not interested. And then you had Marco Rubio. Didn't hold that interest with people, right? Imagine Donald Trump and Liz Cheney in a debate on the debate stage. Who do you think will win that debate? You see the problem? I don't know.
I mean, Rev, she has said, my goal here is not to be a spoiler, is to prevent Donald Trump from ever stepping foot in the White House again. So maybe that comes from the outside rather than running in the race.
Or if she chooses, if she just decides she has to run in the primaries. I mean, I would love to see some Republican primary debates with Liz Cheney against Donald Trump. I would really love to see. She could really weaken him with body punches from the inside. But
So he said she can really weaken him. He really believes this. I don't. I really don't.
I think one thing that we shouldn't miss about this poll is it does say that on a head-to-head, and I agree that we're painfully early here talking about it, on a head-to-head, Biden beats Trump. And I think what the Democrats need to look at is who other than Biden can beat Trump. According to this poll, he can beat him by 4 points. I don't know there's another Democrat that we could poll that can do that. So all of this age talk, we need to start looking at, but the polls say he can beat Trump. Who else can beat Trump? While we're on Cheney land here, the Democrats need to do a little inspection on who they have in their in the backup here if Biden does not keep his word and run. And I think so far he's saying, and I think he really means that he's going to run.
Yeah, who exactly?
You guys hear this? This logic. This poll right now is showing you that Joe Biden would beat Trump. But think about what Joe Biden just did, right? Canceling some of the student loan debt, right? So think about that. And think about the fact that, remember, in the 2016 race between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, remember earlier on, it said that Hillary Clinton was going to beat Trump too. Things change as you get closer to the actual date. And I think, I'm sorry, but the fact that Al Sharpton has to sit here and say the Democrats need to think about who else can beat Trump besides Joe Biden, it's just, I'm sorry. I honestly don't think Joe Biden would beat Trump. I really don't. You know how many people have already told me that they're voting Republican in 2024? You know how many people told me that? I told them that's ridiculous. That if you're mad at the Democrats, you're mad at the two-party system, vote third party, vote independent. But some people are that angry that they're just like, screw this. They said they're voting Republican. I've heard it from several people. So again, I want to remind you that poll was just a little bit over 1,500 people. I don't think Joe Biden would beat Trump in 2024. I really don't. I think it would be pretty close, but I don't think he would beat him. And I think one of the things that would turn some people off is the way that he handled the mandates. That's one of the things that would turn some people off. But to each his own.
Exactly, trotting out of the bullpen, Mike. That's the question. And that's something President Biden has said himself. The White House has said, I see all these polls that say 70% of Democrats don't want me to run again. But I also see the polls that say 98% of you would vote for me again against Donald Trump because you know I'm the guy who've already beat him and can beat him again. That's their argument.
But the reason why he beat him last time, again, part of that was because of the pandemic, right? Part of that was because of the fact that, oh God, people were like, we don't want another year of Trump or whatever. But it wasn't like people were crazy about Joe Biden. It wasn't like people were like, oh my God, I can't wait to vote for Joe Biden. It was really interesting to me. I never saw Joe Biden sign in any of the yards here in Massachusetts. Not once, but he won Massachusetts. That was interesting. I saw Bernie signs everywhere. Bernie and Pete Buttigieg. Makes you wonder, huh? Really makes you wonder. Now, they go on to say, or he mentioned earlier, that who else would beat Trump? I think his time is past now, but I think Bernie Sanders in 2016, I think he would have beaten Donald Trump. Call me crazy, but the DNC was never going to let him get there. Let's just be real. Okay, let's go to some of the comments here. Lawrence says, I think the pollers found the 20 Democratic voters that have not left the party. Right? Thank you for the super chat, AJF. For a while, I respected Robert Reich, but after I was aware he pushed for Liz for president, I accepted that liberals can't be taken seriously. No, it's true. Thank you for this super chat as well as progressives who don't call themselves leftists. Democrats have messed up those two labels. I agree. Everybody's progressive now. Have you noticed? Dana says, I'm voting for my dog. Kudos, Dana. Do what you got to do.